David sat at the dining table, his hands resting on the cool surface, staring blankly at the remnants of a half-finished meal. The sunlight filtered softly through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns on the oak wood. It had been a year since Sarah's passing, but the ache in his chest felt as fresh as the day he had lost her. The faint sound of his daughter Lily, playing in the adjacent room, punctuated the silence. She was lost in a world of imagination, her giggles and murmurs drifting in and out of David's consciousness like a comforting lullaby. He glanced at the photographs that adorned the walls, frozen moments of happiness that felt like a lifetime ago. Sarah's radiant smile, the warmth in her eyes, the way she would lean into him when they watched movies together, memories that were both a balm and a blade. David's heart tightened as he recalled the way they used to sit together at this very table, sharing stories, dreams, and meals. Now, it felt like a hollow shell, a reminder of what was lost. Lily, oblivious to her father's turmoil, was engrossed in her dolls, arranging them meticulously on the floor. "Look, Mommy, you can sit here," she declared, her voice bright and innocent. David's throat tightened. The word "mommy" echoed painfully in the stillness, a ghostly reminder of the life they once shared. He forced a smile, trying to shake off the wave of nostalgia that threatened to drown him. "Hey, sweet pea," he called out, his voice strained but warm. "What are you playing?" Lily looked up, her blue eyes sparkling. "I'm having a tea party. Want to join?" He couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. "Sure, I'd love to," he replied, rising from his chair. He crouched down beside her, picking up a small porcelain cup. "But I should warn you, I'm a terrible tea drinker." "Daddy, you have to pretend, just like in the game," she giggled, her laughter bubbling like the tea she imagined. He laughed, the sound feeling foreign, yet comforting. "All right, I'll pretend. But only if you promise to make the best tea ever." As they played, David felt a flicker of warmth in his heart, a reminder that life still had its moments of joy, even in the shadow of grief. But as the laughter faded into comfortable silence, the weight of reality crept back in, heavy and unyielding. The doorbell rang, pulling him from his reverie. He stood up, brushing his hands on his jeans, a slight sense of anticipation fluttering in his stomach. It was Rebecca, his new girlfriend. Their relationship was still in its infancy, and David often found himself grappling with the guilt of moving on. But Rebecca had been a beacon of light in his darkened world, offering companionship and understanding he hadn't realized he needed. "Hey there!" Rebecca greeted him with a bright smile as he opened the door. She was holding a large casserole dish, steam wafting from it like a comforting embrace. "I thought I'd bring dinner. I hope you're hungry." David stepped aside, motioning for her to enter. "Wow, this smells amazing. You didn't have to go through all this trouble." "Of course I did. You and Lily deserve a good meal. And besides," she added with a playful wink, "I'm hoping to impress you both." Lily peeked around the corner, her eyes widening at the sight of the delicious dish. "What did you make?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "Chicken pot pie, your favorite, right?" Rebecca said, kneeling to meet Lily at eye level. Lily giggled, nodding enthusiastically. "Yay, I love chicken pot pie." David felt a warmth spread through him at the sight of the two of them together. It was moments like this that made him believe in the possibility of happiness again. He ushered Rebecca into the kitchen, where they began setting the table together. As they worked, David caught himself stealing glances at Rebecca. She had a way of lighting up the room, her laughter infectious. Yet, a nagging voice in the back of his mind reminded him of the fragility of this new chapter. He was still healing, still navigating the tangled web of emotions that entwined him since Sarah's death. "Is everything all right?" Rebecca asked, noticing his momentary silence. "You seem a bit distant." David forced a smile, shaking his head as if to dismiss his thoughts. "Just thinking. You know how it is." "Yeah, I do. It's hard, isn't it?" She paused, her expression softening. "But I want you to know I'm here for you. You're not alone in this." He appreciated her words, but doubt lingered. How could he truly move on? Could he ever love someone the way he loved Sarah? Dinner was a cheerful affair, filled with laughter and playful banter. Lily animatedly recounted stories about her day, her innocent joy filling the room like sunlight. David couldn't help but feel a sense of normalcy returning to their lives. As they finished the meal, Rebecca stood to clear the table, but not before pouring tea into delicate cups. "I made some chamomile tea for us to enjoy afterward," she said, her her voice light. David watched as she poured the steaming liquid, the steam curling upward in graceful tendrils. "Sounds perfect," he replied, his heart swelling with gratitude for her thoughtfulness. But as Rebecca settled down at the table, Lily's demeanor shifted. She sat quietly, her little fingers playing nervously with the edge of her napkin. David noticed her glancing from Rebecca to the teacup, her brow furrowing in concentration. "Lily, is everything okay?" David asked, concern creeping into his voice. The little girl looked up, her eyes wide and serious. "Daddy," she whispered, leaning closer. "Don't drink the tea from that cup." David's heart raced at her words. The innocent warning sent a chill down his spine. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" he asked gently, trying to mask his rising unease. I don't like that cup. I had a dream. Rebecca made you drink from it, and then you were sad," Lily said, her voice small but firm. Rebecca glanced at David, her expression unreadable. "Oh, honey, it's just tea. It's perfectly safe. You don't have to worry about anything," she said, her tone light but with a hint of something sharper beneath. David felt a knot form in his stomach. He had always trusted Lily's instincts, but could he truly entertain the idea that Rebecca, who seemed so caring and kind, could be a threat? His mind raced as he glanced between the two of them, feeling a tension he couldn't quite articulate. "Sweetheart, it's okay," he said softly, wanting to reassure both Lily and himself. "It's just tea. I think you're being a little silly." But as he picked up the delicate teacup, Lily's eyes grew wide with fear, and he hesitated, the warmth of the moment suddenly feeling frigid. The laughter that had filled the room moments before seemed to fade into a distant memory, leaving only the weight of doubt hanging heavily in the air. David chuckled softly at Lily's warning, brushing it off as a figment of her vivid imagination. After all, children often concoct wild stories. He was sure this was just another one of those moments. "Sweetheart, it's just tea in a cup. Rebecca wouldn't do anything to hurt us," he reassured her, ruffling her hair playfully. Lily's brow furrowed, a look of deep concern etched on her small face. He tried to ignore the disquiet that crawled under his skin. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, David found himself standing in the kitchen, the warmth of the day lingering in the air. The aroma of chamomile filled the space as he watched Rebecca move about with grace. She was humming a soft tune, seemingly lost in her thoughts as she prepared the tea. A part of him wanted to feel comforted by her presence, yet the unease from earlier lingered like a ghost in the corner of the room. "Hey, David," Rebecca called over her shoulder, her voice melodic yet slightly strained. "Would you like me to pour you a cup?" "Sure, that sounds nice," he replied, trying to shake off the lingering doubts. He approached the counter, observing her as she carefully poured the steaming liquid into two delicate cups. The teacups were an antique set, a gift from his late wife, and they held memories of laughter and warmth. He felt a pang of nostalgia, but buried it under layers of rational thought. "Is Lily okay?" Rebecca asked, glancing at him with a hint of concern. She seemed a bit off at dinner. "Yeah, she's just being a kid. You know how they are," David said, a forced smile plastered on his face, always coming up with fantastical tales. Rebecca nodded, though her expression hinted at something deeper, something unspoken. David could see it in her eyes, a flicker of something. Was it jealousy? Concern? He decided to shake off the feeling. She was good for him, a safe harbor after the storm of losing Sarah. As they settled down at the small dining table, the flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on the walls. David felt a momentary peace as he looked across at Rebecca, her smile radiant in the dim light. But then, like a bolt from the blue, he remembered Lily's warning. "Hey, Rebecca," he began, his voice tinged with hesitation. "What's your take on, well, what Lily said earlier? You know, about the tea." Rebecca looked up, her brow arched in surprise. "Oh, David, that's just silly. Kids say the funniest things. I promise you I wouldn't hurt either of you. I love being here with you and Lily. You're my family now." Right, he said, his heart racing slightly as he lifted the cup to his lips. The steam curled enticingly, and he took a moment to savor the comforting aroma. Yet, he couldn't shake off Lily's warning. "Just trust me," Rebecca said, her voice soothing yet firm. "You can't let her imagination run wild. It's not good for her." David hesitated, the cup hovering just before his mouth. "I guess you're right. I just don't want her to be scared." As he set the cup back down, the door creaked open suddenly, and Lily dashed into the room, her face flushed with urgency. "Daddy, please use the other cup." Her eyes widened in panic, and David felt his heart drop. "Lily, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice more serious now, every ounce of calm draining away. "I had a dream," she cried out, her small hands shaking. "Rebecca is bad. She's trying to hurt you." David's heart raced at her words. "That's enough, Lily," Rebecca interjected, her tone sharp. "You shouldn't frighten your father with nonsense." "Stop, both of you," David shouted, feeling the weight of the room pressing down on him. His mind scrambled to process the conflicting emotions swirling inside him. He looked at Lily, who was now biting her lip, tears pooling in her eyes, and then to Rebecca, whose expression had shifted slightly, a flicker of irritation crossing her features. "Lily, honey," he said, trying to soften his voice. "Why do you think Rebecca would want to hurt us?" "I heard her," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. "On the phone, she was talking about getting rid of obstacles. You're an obstacle, Daddy." "Lily, that's not—" Rebecca started, but David cut her off, his gut twisting with doubt. "Why were you on the phone, Rebecca?" he asked, his voice low and cautious, the atmosphere thick with tension. "I was just talking to a friend," she replied, her eyes narrowing, the veneer of calmness slipping. "You know how it is, just trying to make sure everything is okay here." David stared at her, the shadows of doubt creeping in once again. He remembered the warmth he felt earlier, the fleeting moments of hope that had started to build since she entered their lives. But now, with Lily's eyes pleading and filled with fear, he felt as if the ground beneath him was shifting. "Can we just drink the tea?" Rebecca said, her impatience surfacing. "I thought we were moving forward as a family." David's mind raced as he weighed his options. A part of him wanted desperately to believe in Rebecca, to trust her completely and push aside the absurdity of the situation. But another part, a much louder part, was screaming at him to be cautious. "Maybe we should just put the cups away for tonight," he said slowly, feeling the tension in the air thicken. "Just until we figure this out." Rebecca's face hardened, and for a fleeting moment, David saw something flash in her eyes that made him take a step back. "You're really going to listen to a child's fantasy over me? I'm the one who's here for you, David." Her voice had taken on a sharp edge, and David felt something shift in the atmosphere. David's heart raced as he glanced at Lily, who looked terrified. "I just want to protect my daughter," he said, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "Protect her from what?" Rebecca scoffed, her laughter hollow. "From me? From love? You're being ridiculous." "Maybe," David murmured, his heart heavy. "But I can't ignore what she's telling me." As the tension hung thick in the air, he felt a deep sense of foreboding settle in the pit of his stomach. The choice he faced loomed large: trust Rebecca and risk his daughter's fears, or listen to Lily and confront the dark shadows gathering around him. As the room fell silent, the gravity of the moment pressed down on him, and he realized that he was standing at the precipice of something he had never anticipated, something that could shatter the fragile peace he had fought so hard to rebuild. "Lily, come here," he said softly, beckoning her to his side. He wrapped an arm around her, feeling the warmth of her small body against his. "We'll figure this out together, okay?" As they stood there, united against the storm brewing around them, David couldn't shake the feeling that the truth was lurking just out of sight, waiting to reveal itself in a way he could never have imagined. David set down the teacup with a trembling hand, his brow furrowed in concern. The delicate porcelain rattled softly against the table as he turned to Lily, whose wide eyes were filled with an unsettling mixture of fear and determination. "Lily," he said gently, trying to keep his voice steady, "why are you so worried about that cup? What did you hear?" Lily shifted in her seat, her small fingers gripping the edge of the table. I heard Rebecca talking on the phone," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "She said something about getting rid of obstacles." The innocence of her words hung in the air, heavy with implications that sent a shiver down David's spine. "Obstacles?" David echoed, his mind racing. He glanced at Rebecca, who was busy tidying up the kitchen. A cheerful smile plastered on her face as she hummed a tune. The contrast between her demeanor and Lily's distress felt like a cruel joke. "What else did you hear, sweetheart?" Lily shook her head, her golden curls bouncing with emotion. "Just that. and that she was going to make everything better, Daddy. But it sounded scary. The way she said it made David's heart ache. She was a child, innocent and pure, and yet the darkness of their situation was creeping into her world. "Okay," he said, trying to maintain a calm exterior. "Let's not jump to conclusions. Maybe she was just talking about, I don't know, cleaning the house or something." David's voice wavered as he attempted to soothe both his daughter's fears and his own growing doubts. "Daddy, please!" Lily's voice rose, filled with an urgency that made his stomach twist. "I don't want you to drink from that cup." She pointed emphatically at the offending teacup, as if it were a venomous snake poised to strike. David took a deep breath and turned back to Rebecca, who had just entered the room with a fresh batch of cookies. "What's going on here?" she asked, her brow furrowing slightly at the sight of their tense exchange. "Lily is just worried about the tea," he said, striving to keep the accusation from his tone. "She thinks—" "David, don't!" Lily interrupted, her voice rising in desperation. "Please don't let her fool you." Rebecca's smile faded, replaced by a quizzical expression. "Sweetheart, it's just tea. There's nothing to be afraid of." Her voice was soothing, but David noticed a sharp edge beneath her calm facade. "Why would she be afraid of something so harmless?" David asked, searching Rebecca's face for clues, for a hint of truth. "Kids have wild imaginations, that's all," Rebecca replied, her tone dismissive. "I promise you, I would never do anything to hurt you or Lily." Lily crossed her arms defiantly, her lips pressed into a thin line. "But you said things on the phone, Rebecca. You can't just pretend I didn't hear you." "Lily," David said, trying to interject reason, "let's calm down and talk this through." "David, listen," Rebecca said, her voice low and controlled, but with an undercurrent of frustration. "This is ridiculous. I've done nothing but try to help you two. I care about you both." "Then prove it," Lily demanded, her little body tense with indignation. "Don't drink from that cup." Caught between the fierce loyalty of his daughter and the simmering irritation of his girlfriend, David felt a wave of confusion wash over him. "Okay," he said finally, raising his hands in surrender. "Let's just put the cup aside for now." He reached for the cup and moved it to the side of the table, his pulse quickening as he felt the weight of both their stares piercing into him. Rebecca sighed, her expression softening slightly. "See? It's just tea. You've got to trust me, David." He nodded, but the unease in his stomach didn't dissipate. As he looked at Lily, he saw the tears welling up in her eyes, and he felt a surge of protectiveness. "I trust you, Lily, but I also want to give Rebecca a chance." "Daddy," Lily said, her voice trembling, "I don't want her to take you away from me." "Lily, that's not going to happen," David assured her, his heart aching at the vulnerability in her voice. "I love you, and I will always be here for you. Nothing will change that." "Then why can't we just have normal tea time?" she asked, her brows furrowing in thought. Before he could respond, Rebecca stepped forward, her voice smooth and reassuring. "How about we make a fresh pot of tea together? Just the three of us? I'll even let you pick the flavor, Lily." "That's a great idea," David said, hoping to ease the tension. "What do you think, Lily?" Lily hesitated, her eyes darting between the two adults. "Okay, but I want to pick the cup." "Of course," Rebecca replied, her voice dripping with sweetness. "You can pick any cup you like." As they moved to the kitchen, David watched Lily carefully select a bright, cheerful cup adorned with butterflies. It was her favorite, a gift from Sarah, and he felt a pang of nostalgia as he observed his daughter's small hands gripping the handle. "See," Rebecca said, her smile returning. "Isn't this better?" "Yeah," Lily mumbled, though her eyes still held a trace of wariness. David glanced at Rebecca, a mix of gratitude and suspicion swirling within him. "Thank you for being so understanding, Rebecca. I know this is a lot for Lily." "Of course," she replied, but her smile seemed a touch strained. "I just want us to be a family." As the kettle boiled and the steam curled up into the air, David felt a sense of unease settle in his chest. The sound of bubbling water masked the silence that hung between them. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, and the memory of Lily's words echoed in his mind. After a few minutes, the tea was ready, and they gathered around the table again. David poured the steaming liquid into the cups, feeling the warmth radiate between them. As he looked at Lily, he noticed her gaze fixed intently on the cup, filled with tea, her expression unreadable. "Lily, it's just tea," he said, trying to reassure her one last time. "I know, Daddy," she replied quietly, but her eyes never left the cup. As they sipped their tea, the atmosphere felt strained, the tension palpable. David took a deep breath, trying to push aside the nagging doubt that lurked in the back of his mind. He wanted to believe in this new chance at happiness, but the shadows of uncertainty loomed larger than ever. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed, David found himself unable to sleep. He tossed and turned, replaying the day's events in his mind. The conversation with Lily, Rebecca's dismissive attitude, and the lingering feeling that he was caught in a web of deception. Deciding he needed answers, he slipped out of bed and made his way to the living room. He grabbed his laptop and began to search for information about Rebecca. The glow of the screen illuminated the darkness of the room, and he felt a knot tighten in his stomach as he typed her name into the search bar. As the results appeared, he scrolled through article after article, each one more unsettling than the last. There were whispers of broken relationships, strange disappearances, and a pattern that seemed all too familiar. David's heart raced as he absorbed the information, each revelation sending chills down his spine. The deeper he dug, the more he felt a sense of dread settling in. Rebecca was not who she claimed to be. He could feel the weight of the truth pressing down on him, threatening to suffocate him in its intensity. "Why didn't I see this sooner?" he muttered to himself, his hands trembling as he clicked on another link. As the clock ticked away the minutes, David felt the walls closing in around him. He needed to protect Lily, but how could he do that when he was standing at the precipice of a nightmare? With each new piece of information, he realized that the real danger was closer than he had ever imagined, and the thought sent a jolt of adrenaline coursing through his veins. He had to confront Rebecca, and he had to do it soon. As he sat in the dim light of the living room, the shadows danced around him, and he knew that the night was just beginning. David paced the length of his living room, his mind racing with the weight of his daughter's words. The evening sun cast long shadows through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. He had always prided himself on being a rational man, someone who approached life logically. Yet the events of the past few days had turned his world upside down, filling him with a burgeoning sense of dread. "Mark's right," he muttered to himself, recalling the conversation he had just had with his best friend. Mark had urged him to be cautious, to not let his grief cloud his judgment. "You're still healing, David. It's natural to feel paranoid. Just give it time." Time. How could he give it time when the very foundation of his new life felt so shaky? He leaned against the wall, staring at the family portrait of him, Sarah, and Lily that still hung crookedly on the wall. Sarah's warm smile seemed to mock him now, reminding him of the love he had lost. Love that he desperately wanted to reclaim in some form, but wasn't sure how to do it with Rebecca. With a sigh, he glanced at the kitchen, where the soft clink of ceramic echoed. Rebecca was preparing something again, probably tea. The thought of it made his stomach churn, a lingering echo of Lily's warning ringing in his ears. He felt torn between his feelings for Rebecca, the hope for a fresh start, and the undeniable loyalty he owed to his daughter. "Daddy?" Lily's small voice broke through the clouds of his thoughts. She stood in the doorway, her innocent face contorted in concern. "Are you okay?" David knelt to her level, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just thinking." "About Rebecca?" she asked, her eyes wide with earnestness. He hesitated, a lump forming in his throat. "Yes, a little. But it's nothing for you to worry about." Lily frowned, crossing her arms. "You shouldn't drink her tea, Daddy. I don't like it." "Why not?" "Rebecca is nice to us." David felt a pang of guilt, knowing he was trying to rationalize something that didn't feel right. "She's just trying to help." "She's not helping. I had a dream about her, and it was scary. She was trying to hurt you." "Lily, dreams aren't real." He reached out to touch her shoulder, but she flinched away. "I promise you, nothing is going to happen. I'm right here, and I'm always going to take care of you." "But what if she's not who she says she is?" Lily's voice trembled, her vulnerability striking David like a blow. Before he could respond, Rebecca appeared in the doorway, a bright smile plastered across her face. "Hey there, little lady. How about some delicious tea to brighten up your day?" Lily's expression hardened. "No, I don't want any tea." Rebecca's smile faltered momentarily, and David sensed an undercurrent of tension. "Oh, come on, it's just tea. I promise it's nothing but good for you." "Stop it, Rebecca," David snapped, the frustration spilling out of him. "You need to stop pushing her. She doesn't want it." Rebecca's eyes narrowed slightly, but her voice remained sweet, almost saccharine. "I'm just trying to help. I thought we were all in this together." "Maybe I don't want to be in this with you," Lily declared, her small voice filled with determination. It was a bold statement for a child, but it resonated with David's own inner turmoil. "Lily, that's enough," David said firmly, but inside, he was torn. His daughter was fighting for him in a way that he couldn't even articulate, and he felt an overwhelming urge to protect her. "Why don't you go to your room and play for a bit? I'll be in soon." As Lily turned and stomped away, David felt a wave of guilt wash over him. He didn't want to choose between Rebecca and Lily, but he felt an insidious pressure building within him. He loved Rebecca, but could he trust her? "David, you need to relax," Rebecca said, her tone still light, but edged with something darker. "Lily is just a child. She doesn't understand." "Then maybe we should listen to her," he replied, crossing his arms defiantly. Rebecca's smile faded, and for a brief moment, a flicker of something cold passed across her features. "You're letting your grief cloud your judgment. You don't want to ruin this for us, do you?" "Ruin what?" he asked, incredulous. "What are we building here, Rebecca? Because it doesn't feel right." "Maybe you should think about what you're saying," Rebecca said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You're still mourning Sarah. It's not fair to project those feelings onto me." David felt a surge of anger. "This isn't about Sarah. This is about my daughter's safety." Rebecca stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she spoke softly. "You're starting to sound paranoid, David. You need to trust me." He couldn't shake the feeling that something was fundamentally off. As he turned to the kitchen where the tea was brewing, uncertainty gnawed at him. How could he trust someone who was so eager to dismiss his daughter's fears? "Let's just enjoy a peaceful evening, shall we?" Rebecca suggested, her voice dripping with sweetness again, but David could sense the edge beneath her words. "Sure," he replied, forcing a smile, even as doubt lingered. "Let's just have some tea." Later that evening, he found himself sitting on the couch, absently scrolling through his phone, while Rebecca cleaned up in the kitchen. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, a sensation that prickled the back of his neck. Just as he began to feel a semblance of normalcy, the sound of hurried footsteps shattered the calm. Lily burst into the room, her face pale and eyes wide with fear. "Daddy, please don't drink it," she yelled, panic straining her voice. "I had a dream. I saw her." David's heart sank, and he instinctively put the cup down, looking from Lily to Rebecca, whose expression had shifted ever so slightly. There was something predatory in her gaze, a flicker of annoyance that sent a chill down his spine. "Lily, sweetie, calm down," he said, trying to steady himself. "What did you see in your dream?" She was trying to hurt you, Daddy," Lily cried, tears brimming in her eyes. "I don't want you to drink it." Rebecca's smile was gone now, replaced with a tight-lipped stare. "David, this is getting ridiculous. She's just a child. Dreams are just that. Dreams." "Are they?" David shot back, his voice rising. "You don't know what she saw. You don't know what she's feeling." The room filled with an uncomfortable silence, the air thick with tension. David felt the walls closing in, and for the first time, he truly questioned his choice to let Rebecca into their lives. "Daddy, please." Lily's voice broke through the haze of uncertainty, her small frame shaking. "You have to believe me." He looked at his daughter, her innocent pleading striking a chord deep within him. "I do believe you, Lily," he said, kneeling down to her level. "But we have to figure this out together. No one is going to hurt me, I promise." Rebecca stepped forward, her eyes narrowing dangerously. "You're making a mistake, David. You're letting fear control you." "No, I'm trying to protect my daughter," he retorted, feeling a surge of defiance. For a moment, the room held its breath. David felt the palpable tension between the two women in his life. On one side was Lily, all innocence and desperation. On the other, Rebecca, a woman he had tried to embrace but now felt like a stranger. "Lily," he said gently, "I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" "Please, Daddy," she begged, her small hands gripping his shirt. As he looked into her eyes, he felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He was caught in a storm of emotions, and the path ahead felt tangled and unclear. Would he take the leap and believe his daughter's fears, or would he dismiss them as childish imagination? The answer loomed heavy in the air, and deep down, he knew that the consequences of his choice would echo far beyond this moment. David stood in the dimly lit living room, the weight of tension hanging thick in the air. The remnants of dinner lingered on the table, untouched, as he faced Rebecca. Her expression was a mixture of frustration and confusion, her hands resting on her hips, betraying the simmering anger beneath her calm exterior. "Why can't you just talk to her?" Rebecca demanded, her voice edged with impatience. "She's just a child. Kids say the craziest things. You're letting her fears control you." "Control me?" David's voice rose, disbelief coloring his tone. "She's not just saying things, Rebecca. She's scared, and I can't just brush that off because you think it's childish nonsense." Rebecca rolled her eyes, a gesture that only fueled David's anger. "You're letting her manipulate you. Look at how easily you're swayed by a little girl's imagination. It's not healthy, David. You need to be a man and not let her fears dictate your life." David took a deep breath, trying to quell the rising tide of frustration. "I'm trying to protect her. She's been through so much already, losing her mother, and now I'm trying to bring someone new into her life. I just want to make sure she feels safe." "Safe?" Rebecca scoffed. "Safe from what? Me? I'm not the monster she thinks I am. I love you both. I'm trying to help you rebuild your life." "Love doesn't come with ultimatums, Rebecca. It doesn't come with pressure to ignore my daughter's feelings." David ran a hand through his hair, feeling the heat of the argument. "You don't understand what it's like to lose someone and then try to find happiness again." "Then maybe you shouldn't be dating," Rebecca shot back, the words hanging in the air like a slap. "Maybe you should just wallow in your grief and leave me out of it." David felt a rush of anger, but beneath it lay a deep sadness. He glanced toward the hallway where Lily's room was, imagining his daughter curled up in bed, listening to the fight erupting in the living room. "I don't want to fight with you," he said, his voice quieter now, almost pleading. "I just want to know that Lily feels safe with you. I want us to be a family." Rebecca's expression softened for a moment, but the flicker of vulnerability was quickly masked by her defensive demeanor. "Then, let's talk to her. Let's reassure her together. I can make her see that I'm not a threat, that I'm here to stay." The thought of confronting Lily with Rebecca filled David with dread. What if she only grew more anxious? What if Rebecca's presence heightened Lily's fears rather than alleviating them? "I don't know if that's a good idea right now," he replied cautiously. "Then, what do you suggest, David?" Rebecca stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "Are you going to let your daughter dictate this relationship? Are you going to let her fear keep us apart?" David felt the mounting pressure of the situation, the conflicting emotions swirling within him. He wanted to believe in Rebecca, to trust her intentions, but the nagging voice in his head echoed Lily's warning. What if he was making a terrible mistake? Later that night, while the house settled into silence, David found himself pacing in the kitchen. His mind raced with thoughts of the argument, the seed of doubt Rebecca had planted. He glanced at the teacup sitting innocently on the counter, a reminder of the tension that had permeated their evening. "I need to know," he muttered to himself, the resolve forming in his mind. He approached the counter and picked up the teacup that Rebecca had used earlier, the one Lily had warned him about. "This ends now." He glanced over his shoulder to ensure Rebecca was still in the bedroom, her back turned to him as she scrolled through her phone. Quietly, he switched the teacups, his heart racing as he placed the cup Lily had warned him about at the forefront. He was determined to test Rebecca, to see how she would react. As he made his way to the living room, he could feel the weight of his plan pressing down on him. This was a delicate dance between trust and caution, love and protection. He needed to know if Rebecca truly had any ill intentions, or if he was simply letting his fears get the better of him. David poured hot water into the teacup, watching as the steam curled into the air. He could hear Rebecca's voice from the bedroom, muffled but still audible. "You're being ridiculous, David. Just have a little faith," she had said moments before. With a deep breath, he poured the tea, the liquid swirling around the cup like the tumult of his thoughts. He returned to the living room, where Rebecca sat on the couch, her eyes lighting up at the sight of him. "Is it ready?" she asked, a smile breaking through her earlier frustration. "Yeah, I thought we could have a little nightcap," David replied, his heart pounding as he picked up the cup he had switched. He forced a smile, trying to mask the tension that filled the room. "Great. "I could use a little something after that mess earlier," Rebecca said, her tone lightening. "You know I didn't mean it. I care about you both so much." David nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something lurking beneath the surface, a darkness that he couldn't quite grasp. He lifted the cup to his lips, pretending to sip, gauging Rebecca's reaction. He watched her eyes closely. He needed to see if there was any hint of anxiety, any indication that she knew what he was doing. "Isn't this tea lovely?" he remarked, forcing a casual tone. "I think it's just what we need to unwind." Rebecca smiled, a flicker of relief crossing her face. "I'm glad you think so. It's my special blend. I want us to have moments like this, David, just the two of us." Just as his lips brushed against the rim of the cup, David felt his phone vibrate in his pocket. Startled, he pulled it out, glancing at the screen. The message was from an unknown number, the words sending a chill down his spine. "You're in danger. Protect Lily." His heart raced, the implications crashing down on him like a tidal wave. He looked up at Rebecca, whose expression had shifted, the warmth replaced by a flicker of something darker. "Who is it?" she asked, her voice steady, but the shadows in her eyes betraying a flicker of concern. I don't know," David stammered, the phone trembling in his hand. "It's just a weird message." "Just ignore it," she said quickly, her composure faltering for a brief moment. "People send stupid things all the time. You can't let that get to you." But the tension in the room thickened again. David's instinct screamed at him, warning bells ringing in his head. He felt trapped between the woman he was trying to build a life with and the daughter he was desperate to protect. As the shadows deepened in the corners of the room, he realized that the danger he had been feeling was not just a figment of his imagination. It was real, and it was closing in on him. David woke up the next morning with a sense of urgency gnawing at his insides. The events of the previous night replayed in his mind like a broken record. He could still hear Lily's panicked voice ringing in his ears, and the chilling message he'd received from the unknown number felt like a shadow lurking in the corners of his thoughts. He needed answers, and he needed them now. As he dressed, he felt a mix of determination and fear. He was no longer just a widowed father trying to rebuild his life. He was a man on a mission to protect his daughter from a potential threat. He glanced at the mirror, running a hand through his disheveled hair, and steeled himself for the confrontation that awaited him. Today, he would demand the truth from Rebecca. When David descended the stairs, he was greeted by the smell of fresh coffee and the soft sound of Rebecca humming in the kitchen. She was standing by the counter, busying herself with breakfast. The warm morning light filtered through the window, casting a glow on her carefree demeanor. Yet, David felt a chill creep down his spine. "Good morning, sleepyhead," she chirped, her back still turned to him. "I made pancakes. Thought we could have a nice family breakfast." David cleared his throat, the words he had rehearsed in his head suddenly feeling heavy on his tongue. "Rebecca, we need to talk." She turned around, her smile faltering slightly as she noticed the seriousness etched on his face. "Sure. What's on your mind?" His heart raced as he took a deep breath. "It's about Lily. She's been saying some things that concern me. Things about you." Rebecca's expression shifted, the warmth in her eyes replaced by a flicker of irritation. "What has she been saying, David?" He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "She mentioned overhearing you on the phone, talking about getting rid of obstacles. What did she mean by that?" For a moment, he thought he saw a flash of something in her eyes. Anger, perhaps? Or was it fear? But just as quickly it was gone, replaced by an icy calm. "That's ridiculous. Children have wild imaginations. You shouldn't take everything she says to heart." David shook his head, feeling his resolve strengthen. "I can't just ignore it. I need to know you're not a danger to her. I need to know the truth." Rebecca's demeanor shifted instantly. The calm facade shattered, revealing a simmering fury. "You think you can just replace me? After everything I've done for you? You're just going to throw me away like I'm nothing?" David recoiled, taken aback by the sudden intensity of her words. "This isn't about replacing anyone, Rebecca. This is about protecting my daughter. I need to know who you really are." "Who I really am?" she spat, her voice rising. "I'm the one who's been here for you, who's tried to help you pick up the pieces. And this is how you repay me? By doubting me? By listening to a little girl who doesn't know any better?" In that moment, David could see the cracks in her carefully constructed facade, the desperation in her voice, the way her hands trembled ever so slightly. These were not the signs of someone innocent. His instinct screamed at him that there was more to Rebecca than met the eye. "Maybe you need to tell me about your past, Rebecca. I've done some digging, and I found some things that don't add up," he pressed, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "What have you found?" she challenged, her eyes narrowing. "Your previous relationships, how they ended. It's all too coincidental, too tragic," he replied, feeling a surge of confidence. "It feels like a pattern." Rebecca's laughter was cold and humorless. "You think you know me? You think you can just research someone and understand their life? You have no idea what I've been through." "Then tell me," he urged, his voice softening as he tried to reach her. "Help me understand why you're here and what you want." For a brief moment, it seemed like she might relent, her expression softening as a flicker of vulnerability crossed her features. But then, as quickly as it appeared, it vanished. "I want what's best for us, David, for you and for Lily. Why can't you see that?" "Because it doesn't feel right," he shot back, his heart pounding. "I don't feel safe, and neither does Lily." At that moment, the tension in the room thickened, wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket. David could hear the distant sound of Lily playing in her room, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just outside her door. Rebecca stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper, laced with an unsettling intensity. "You think you're protecting her, but you're just pushing me away. You're making a mistake, David." David felt a shiver run down his spine. "What do you mean?" But before she could respond, Lily's voice broke through the tension. "Daddy, can I come down for breakfast?" "Not now, sweetie," David called, his gaze never leaving Rebecca's. "See, even she knows something's off. You're not being honest with me," he pressed, taking a step back, forcing space between them. "David, let's not involve Lily in this," Rebecca said, her voice suddenly calm again. But there was an edge to it that made him uneasy. "Why not?" "She's the one who alerted me to the danger," he shot back, feeling the weight of the conversation pressing heavily on his chest. "Danger? You think I'm a danger to her?" Rebecca laughed again, but this time it was hollow, a sound devoid of joy. "You have no idea what danger really is. You're the one who's putting her at risk by keeping me around." "Stop turning this around. You're the one who's making me question everything," David insisted, feeling the walls closing in. "You need to tell me the truth." But instead of answering, Rebecca's expression hardened. "You really think you can control this? You think you can just demand answers from me like I owe you something?" "Maybe I do," David retorted, his patience wearing thin. "You're in my home, with my daughter, and I need to know you're not a threat to her." Suddenly, Rebecca's eyes flashed with something dangerous, a flicker of malice that sent a chill down his spine. "You want to know the truth, David? Fine, but be careful what you wish for." As she spoke, David felt a growing sense of dread, the air around them thickening with tension. He had unwittingly unleashed something he could no longer contain, and deep down, he feared what that truth might reveal. Just then, Lily appeared at the top of the stairs, her small figure framed by the light streaming in from the window. "Daddy, what's wrong? Why are you yelling?" David turned, his heart sinking at the sight of his daughter standing there, wide-eyed and innocent. "Nothing, sweetie," he called, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Just a little discussion with Rebecca." But Rebecca's gaze bore into him, a silent warning that made his heart race. "Lily, come down here," she said, her voice smooth and inviting, yet somehow unsettling. "No, Lily, stay there," David said quickly, panic rising in his chest. "It's not safe." "Why not?" Lily asked, her small voice tinged with confusion. "Just, please wait," David pleaded, stepping toward his daughter, but Rebecca's hand shot out, grabbing his wrist with surprising strength. "Don't," she hissed, her eyes narrowing. "You're making this worse." "Daddy, I'm scared," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. In that moment, everything came crashing down. David felt the weight of the world on his shoulders, and as he looked into Lily's frightened eyes, he realized the true depth of the danger they were in. Rebecca was no longer just a girlfriend. She was a threat, a dark shadow looming over the fragile happiness he was trying to rebuild. "Lily, go to your room, now," David commanded, his voice firm, cutting through the tension like a knife. "But Daddy," Lily started, but he interrupted her, desperation flooding his words. "Just do it, please!" As she scampered away, David turned back to face Rebecca, his heart pounding. "You need to leave, now!" Rebecca's expression morphed into a twisted smile, a hint of something sinister lurking beneath the surface. "You really think you can just get rid of me? You don't know what you're messing with, David." "Get out!" David shouted, feeling a surge of adrenaline as he stepped forward, ready to force her out if necessary. But before he could act, he heard Lily's voice again from the hallway. "Daddy, look out!" Instinctively, David turned just in time to see Rebecca lunging at him, a flash of something glinting in her hand. In that instant, the world went dark, and he realized the true peril was closer than he ever imagined. As the chapter closed, the room filled with a palpable tension, echoing the fear and uncertainty that loomed over David and Lily's fragile existence, leaving the audience breathless and desperate for what would come next.